Before I start, this is just a reminder, Shit's Fucked is based on my own experiences with sobriety, mental health, and trauma. Each person's experiences and recovery is different. I hope you enjoy the podcast, but please note that I am not a medical professional. However, I hope to introduce you to resources and people who may be able to help. Welcome to Shit's Fucked, where we talk about all the shit that is fucked in this world. Now, for those who are new here, my name is Paris, and I've battled alcohol addiction for 17 years, struggled with methamphetamine for 10 years, and I also worked in the adult industry to support my habits for 3 years. I was diagnosed with BPD, so borderline personality disorder, and CPTSD, so complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I've come a long way. Now over 1 year sober from meth, and I've completely redefined my relationship with alcohol. Now I'm on a mission of spreading awareness, providing resources, support groups, and toolbox kits for life, and ultimately making a positive impact on the lives of those affected by addiction and mental health challenges. These resources and tools will come through my own experiences, alongside guests in the industry, and the stories shared from those with lived experiences. This platform has become a safe space for people of all backgrounds and cultures to turn to, and a bridge to gap the current waitlist people are experiencing while trying to reach professional help. A big part of what I like to address as well is the flaws in the system and what we can all do as a collective to try and change this. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to introduce our guest speaker, Clare MacLeod from Clare MacLeod Consultancy. Clare transitioned from clinical practice to focus on providing information and consultation to families and professionals working with children who exhibit harmful sexual behaviours. Additionally, Clare also offers trauma-informed, evidence-based supervision, mentoring, and training for individuals in helping professions. Today, we are discussing the importance of being trauma-informed, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Today's special guest is Clare MacLeod. She's actually coming in from Brisbane. So Clare MacLeod, she is a social worker and she's a trauma-informed consultant. So welcome to the show, Clare. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, you were mentioning earlier to me that it's a bit hot over there in Brisbane. What's the weather been like?
I think that it's the humidity that's the worst. So when you get kind of 70 plus humidity, and as you can probably hear, I'm not from Australia, and I definitely haven't acclimatized to this weather. So I'm sitting in the beautiful air conditioning, which feel very privileged to have right now. So,
oh, perfect. Yeah, we've been in a bit of a heat wave over in WA, so it's been pretty hectic, but it's just... yeah, it started cooling down a little bit. So I managed to actually go and have a beach swim this morning, which was pretty lush.
Lovely. Nice. Yeah.
That was good. It was good. So whereabouts are you from? Like, how long have you been in Australia?
I've been in Australia longer than I've been in the UK, actually. So I'm from the UK. I was born in northern England, not far from Beatles land.
Awesome.
And I also identify with my Scottish heritage, which is the outer Western Hebrides of Scotland. So
incredible.
Proud MacLeod woman.
Proud MacLeod, I love it. It's got a nice ring to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, let's just dive straight on in, and I'm just going to ask you, what can you share with us about your background and your 31 years of experience in the trauma field?
Okay, I could probably write a book about this, but I won't. I'll just give you a brief introduction. Before I do, though, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm actually on Turrbal and Yurruga land, First Nation owners of the land that I actually stand on, and I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present, and their laws, customs and creations and spirits. And I'd like to recognise the lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning, and that's I'm I'm really blessed to kind of be on this land. So
thank you so much for that, Claire.
That's okay. I started my clinical journey training in psychodynamic work and holotropic breath work, expressive therapies, gestalt work, somatic work, and sand play therapy. The course was experiential, and I'm forever grateful that I worked on my trauma and all the stuff that was kind of there. So I actually was able to clear a lot of that, which I think was really important for being able to work with others. From there, I then decided that I'd do a social work degree. It wasn't the best timing because my children were all in high school, and one of them was doing year 12. We had one modem and one computer for the whole family, and it was a dial-up internet. So it was kind of like, who's gone on the phone? I'm trying to do this. So it was kind of that sort of a situation. My social work and therapeutic practice predominantly has included working with women survivors of childhood sexual abuse, sexual assault and trauma in non-government agencies and in private practice. I've also worked with children and families with complex trauma, and in particular specialised in working with children and young people who engage in harmful sexual behaviours, which is quite a niche area and not a lot known about it, but I'm very passionate about it because there's often misinformation, and it just kind of it can often do a disservice to children and families. So I'm really passionate about sharing that knowledge. What else? Contributed to a few projects, policies and procedures, presented workshops to wide audiences, and as I said, my more recent work is focusing on being able to provide trauma-informed practice and consultancy with folks who want support and information regarding working with children and young people who engage in problem sexual and harmful sexual behaviours. So that's a bit of background in a nutshell, if that was a nutshell. But anyway,
no, you did well. So would you say, because it sounds like you've got a bit of a focus on children and youth around, is it around like sexual abuse that you're educating people?
So harmful sexual behaviour, there's one of the myths around harmful sexual behaviour is that they must have been abused to be actually engaging in harmful sexual behaviours themselves. The predominant factor around harmful sexual behaviour is actually neglect. So having said that, some children will have been sexually abused. So that is a big area. And then also, as I said before, the area around women who, not just women now, I guess anybody who's experienced childhood sexual abuse. I'm actually in the middle of putting together a training around older people who've been sexually abused as children, because there's not much work been done around that. So
absolutely.
Kind of feel strongly about sharing information about that too. So
amazing. And for our listeners out there, how would you define like harmful sexual behavior? Like what exactly is that?
So there's plenty of websites around that will actually look at what are problem behaviours and harmful behaviours as opposed to what is a normal sexual behaviour. So that's kind of where there's a bit of a grey area, and the grey area is around often people don't realise that, some behaviours are actually normal and they're not actually harmful. So there's like red area, orange area, and green area is a way that you can describe it, and that's on some of the websites that you can access. There are a few good ones, and if you want links to them, I can give those to you, and you can share those with your readers at the end. So yeah,
perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So I know that you've got Clare MacLeod consultancy now. So that when was that born, and what motivated you to provide further education to workers in the field?
I suppose, like, start off, I've been around for a long time, and when COVID hit, I decided that I'd pull back a bit, and obviously was just doing telehealth, and I was doing telehealth because the clinic was not kind of functioning where I was working, and also working with children. It's kind of high risk. So I stepped back and did some telehealth work. And as I was kind of thinking, I've been doing this for a long time, and my passion and value is definitely around sharing knowledge, evidence-based knowledge, with other helping professionals. And I was, seeing, as I said, around the harmful sexual behaviour, there's a lot of assumptions and myths and misbeliefs around what they are and how they can be supported to, heal around that. So I just pulled back, and I kind of thought, I want to retire, but I can't really afford to retire. So I'll just step back and change my work from 100% clinical work and supervision to more just the odd clinical work and more looking at the consultancy work. So I wanted to be able to provide a service without the red tape that goes with any workplace.
Yes, of course.
And I found that I was often advocating for clients when I was working in NGOs, and the red tape creates barriers. And when you're kind of working with people, they're already at a disadvantage, and we don't need to be putting more barriers in. So whilst innocently there may be systems and policies in place, they can actually be a form of secondary violence and abuse. So I couldn't continue doing that, and I knew it was leading to burnout of constantly hitting barriers. So I decided to rent a clinic room, and I became registered to provide Medicare rebates, and I built up clients and supervisees mainly through word of mouth and working well with a couple of referring GPs. And as I said, when COVID hit, I went totally online doing telehealth, and I developed a health issue which literally stopped me in my tracks. I had a nice little trip in an ambulance, and all I was thinking about whilst I was in the ambulance was, I need to contact the clients for today's appointments. So I knew I had to stop, and it forced me to step back and take a break from work. So that's what
your body was saying no. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So my body was saying enough. So I gave myself time to reflect, and I've always carried a strong value of wanting to share that knowledge and experience with others. And I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I can pass on my experience and knowledge and expertise. So I decided to stop the 100% clinical work and move more to supervising, training and consultancy work. So that's where I was.
Incredible. And would you say most of your clients or people that you're educating, would they be focused in like a particular sector, like mental health? Would they be in the AOD sector? Would they be working specifically with children? What kind of industry are you focusing on at the moment?
I would say I'm not actually focusing. It's more around if you're in a helping profession and you're supporting children, then I will provide support and education and knowledge and my experience with you. So I've worked with teachers, yoga teachers,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
mental health professionals, social workers,
Yeah.
psychologists,
Quite a range.
support workers. So I like I say, I just feel passionately that it's about sharing the evidence-based knowledge that we know is going to support people who have experienced some form of trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in per se. Like if you're working with children, you should be trauma informed.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Moving on to the next question, though, how would you define being trauma informed, and why is it crucial for these workers to possess this understanding?
That's a good question. So when I started out, I didn't know anything about what trauma informed meant. I suppose over the last 20 years or so, there's been a greater awareness of what trauma is. And when I was doing my own therapy and healing, I just put my trust in professionals to provide me with the best possible support. So I kind of went in blind. In Australia, there's been much has been written about trauma caused by the colonisation of Indigenous populations and the consequences of intergenerational trauma. There's also been a large body of research done, and some of the well-known studies that stand out are probably the work done with survivors of World War I. So that was actually when it was actually defined as shell shock. So if you just went onto YouTube and I'd put a trigger warning beforehand. If you just looked up videos of shell shock, the way that it impacts the body is just let alone the psychological body. So
yes, of course,
really full on. Some of the other more recent studies that have been done have been around 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina. So that's led to a framework being developed that supports aspects of complex and single incident trauma, which is called trauma informed. So there is, however, obviously more work to be done regarding providing what culturally appropriate and trauma-informed frameworks are for Indigenous populations. There are a few good programs, but there's definitely much more work to be done in this area. If you kind of look at the framework as being important, because trauma is actually it's more common than we realise. But the other thing is, and there's no two people will react the same way to a traumatic event. So you've got all of their world around them, so their context, who they are in the world. There's so many factors that are going to kind of influence the way that you respond to a traumatic event. If someone's using a mental health service, we can assume that they are carrying some form of trauma experience. If they're neurodivergent, you can assume that they're carrying some form of trauma, because we live in a neurotypical world that doesn't yet fully support neurodivergence. So and if you kind of looked at trauma-informed framework, actually provides a holistic space to be able to support people to feel safe, to be able to build trust, and to actually overcome their fear and that sense of betrayal. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, because at the moment, I'm studying, so for our listeners out there, I'm actually studying a Cert 4 in alcohol and other drugs at North Metro TAFE, which the government are funding, by the way, for free,
Excellent.
which is awesome. That's here in WA. I'm not sure about the other states, but that's been a really big part of our course. So I actually have a trauma-informed unit, but a big thing that we're trying to address as well is particularly with our Indigenous First Nations friends, just being culturally aware and safe and making sure that we are informed of that generational trauma that has occurred over the years. And it's a part of harm reduction as well. You know, if you're aware that someone is dealing with some kind of trauma, no matter what it is, it can give you that information on how to approach their recovery, their treatment in a more informed way and in a safe way. And it's really important. It's really, really important. And it's something that I hope that a lot of people are educating themselves on who are workers in the field, because I've seen I've seen myself just from my own experience of being admitted into psych wards and things like that back in 2019. And I had found some workers weren't very trauma informed. And I've got complex PTSD, right? And I often found that I wasn't feeling as supported, you know, and as you said, like, you're building that trust, and it kind of impacted my own recovery. So, you know, there's that harm being caused to the patient, to the client.
Trauma. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, you can actually be increasing the risk of harm. So, very, very important work that you're doing.
Yeah, like you talked about First Nations people as well. And it's like, if you look at all the policies that have been put in place around mental health and the assessments and the, you know, the diagnostic criteria, they're anglicised and they don't kind of suit First Nations people population.
Absolutely.
So there needs to be a lot more work done around how people are assessed, for example, in the child protection system. So it's not all, you know, family support systems where you know, it's like
recognising the kinship systems as well.
Oh yeah, you've hit the nail on the head.
Big one. It's completely different to what we have, what we consider family in the Western society and our family structures. Totally different to our First Nations people and their kinship system. It's just not the same at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's very important to be aware of that as well.
I'm converted, aren't I?
Yeah. I mean, I've been really enjoying learning all of this and just trying to make sure that when I do move into the field, that, you know, I am very aware of this. I'm educated on it, and I know the best way to safely approach, whether it's First Nations or someone else who's dealing with the trauma. And just really being able to be respectful of them and just safe. I think that's the biggest thing. It's just being safe with them. Yeah. So moving on to the next question, with the growing awareness of trauma and its effects, how do you see the landscape of trauma care evolving in the coming years?
Yeah, right. Just kind of thinking, so like with the media exposure of traumatic events now, so as I said, 9/11, hurricanes and world disasters, and as we see global warming, there are a lot more world disasters. Other things like sexual abuse scandals, war atrocities. Trauma's actually moved to more of the forefront of our consciousness. And, you know, as I said before, it wasn't really considered normal, but it was actually considered abnormal to have some kind of form of trauma.
Yes, that's true.
So it's so much more prevalent now, and the more awareness, the more awareness gained of the impact and effects, the greater acknowledgement and acceptance, as you say, that acceptance that human services and helping professionals can hopefully be practicing from a trauma-informed framework. And the support that I've provided to other professionals, as I said, like teachers, nurses, etc., strongly identifies that we, these professions are not what they used to be. So, for example, if you go into teaching, your role's not just one of teaching now. It's one of being a social worker, administration worker, provider of meals and clothing and emotional and
So
psychological
true.
care. Yeah, so any profession that works with humans will need to apply a trauma-informed framework.
Yeah, and most teachers as well will have to be mandatory reporters as well.
Well, they are anyway. Yeah,
Yeah.
they are mandatory reporters. Yeah, and there's something about that as well. Like anybody can report child abuse. And I was actually listening to a webinar. I was participated in a webinar yesterday, and I kind of the one thing that I took away from that is that the person that the child tells is the one that needs to report it, because it's like Chinese whispers. It can kind of get, oh, did they really do that? Or, blah, 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 blah. So that's mandatory reporting is like if a child's at harm and they're telling you, they're asking you for help, so help them.
Yes, and it's our ethical duty. So whether you're a mandatory reporter or not, it's within our ethical and duty of care as well to ensure that we do report that.
Yeah, I've always had this mantra since I started, actually before I started working, when I was doing my own stuff, and I had a bit of a spiritual experience, and it was around being the voice for children. Yeah, so when they can't speak, that you speak for them, you advocate for them.
Absolutely. We got to protect our children, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So what are some practical strategies that organizations can implement to create a more trauma-informed environment?
Okay, how long have you got?
Just a couple of examples.
I actually want to quote trauma-informed researcher and practitioner, Dr. Sandra Bloom, and she actually says, trying to implement trauma-specific clinical practices without first implementing trauma-informed organizational culture is like throwing seeds in dry land. So yeah, so if we were to look at the principles of trauma-informed care, safety is obviously the key, and you mentioned that before. So how can we promote feelings of safety within the space we work? And if you were to do a review, and it's probably a good idea if you're working in an organisation or if you're working for yourself in private practice, do a review of the safety of your clinic space, of your organisation. What do you think you'd need to put in place for that to occur? So some of the examples might be, is the building physically and emotionally safe? Is there a lot of outside noise? Is the building room soundproofed? What are the furnishings like? If you have admin, reception staff, how do they promote feelings of safety? What does your waiting room space look like? What does your clinic room look like? If you work in a shared space, how do other therapists and staff promote feelings of safety? Do you offer your client the choice of where to sit? How close in proximity are you to them? Is the outside environment well lit? So, it gets dark pretty early in Queensland because we don't have daylight savings. So, you might be working when it's actually dark. So how well is it lit? So yeah, it's really important to kind of focus on the whole context in which your services are provided. And I'll just give you one example, and I'm actually going to post this on my own site because it's an area that's missed. But I've worked with women who've come from cult or religious abuse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And many clinics will have to create that ambience, either incense sticks or candles.
Yeah.
So for somebody who's been through cult or ritual, or that ritualistic abuse, religious abuse, that can be highly
Quite triggering.
triggering. Yeah.
I wouldn't have
Can
even
kind of
thought of
cause
that. That's a really good point.
responses. Yeah. So I'm on a little mission to share that one. Yeah, this week.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, I wouldn't have even thought of that, because there's so many places that I go to. Even my psychologist, I love the ambience of their clinic. It's so welcoming. It's really like all their couches are really comfy. So you've already physically got comfort, and then it's not like brightly lit. It's quite a warm lighting, and they've got the incenses. They might even have actually, I think they've got air diffusers that are in there, and there's a lot of like water stations that might have like lemon and like cucumber, or like just really like la-di-da. So I'm always like, let me just treat myself, and I feel really good. And they've got beautiful wallpaper throughout it. It's quite colorful, and it just makes the world of a difference. And I just wouldn't have thought that incenses and candles and things like that could be actually quite triggering for people. Like I didn't even think of that.
Well, if you think about smell, it's an olfactory. It's the implicit memory. So it's been around for a long time. So if you were to kind of think that in a more pleasant way, if you think about walking past a bakery when they're baking the bread, like you can probably evoke those smells right now. Yeah,
I can.
Or, think of a nice smell. Like for me, it was my great grandmother used to come and do the ironing, and she always smelt of ironing and starch. That old fashioned starch and stuff. And it's like I can bring it up now and like have happy memories of my great grandmother. So
smells very associated to memory.
Absolutely. Yes. So in that sense, it's about asking a client in the room, is there anything in this room that you would like me to remove to make you feel more safe?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's really important, is checking in with that person as well and making sure, because we can try and do the best we can. Like we might be putting on incenses because we think it is going to be relaxing. I mean, most of the time it is, but there are these circumstances, and it's just being trauma informed.
I like I know, like for me, like my lived experience trauma, it's like there's a certain aftershave, and it's like if that comes anywhere near me, I'm off. I'm off.
No, I'm the same.
I'm getting out of the way. So
just like flight response. Yeah, I'm the same with some certain cleaning chemicals, because I was a really bad meth addict. So there's some cleaning chemicals that I can smell where I'm like, this is obviously, I've smelled this chemical before. Like this is, I need to get out of here. So it can be super, super triggering. So I totally hear you on that one. So what are some of the dangers that can occur if traumas aren't addressed correctly with a client?
We've kind of gone a bit into that already, haven't we?
We have.
What's not safe in the clinic room, and what's not safe in the whole building. So if you were to kind of look at safety as the key for applying trauma-informed practice, it's really important to recognise your own limitations as a helping professional. So if a client was to come in for seemingly easy support and something much bigger is uncovered or disclosed, recognizing your limitations around how you can support that client. We actually owe it to our clients from an ethical, moral, and professional accountability stance, to be able to have hand on heart state that we are trained to be able to provide trauma-informed care to our clients. And I feel really strongly about that. As helping professionals, we owe it to our clients.
Absolutely.
To be trained in trauma-informed care. So there's a risk that inadvertently we may re-traumatize a client. So clients with complex trauma histories have got an inbuilt antenna which will activate their feelings of safety and trust. So they'll spot it a mile off if you're bullshitting them. So, like they might ask you a question and you answer them, but you don't really know the answer. And it's like, well, you've lost their trust straight away.
Yes.
So, and to be fair on helping professionals, if you kind of look at it from the therapist perspective, there's a strong desire to want to help and support a client with their trauma stories.
Of course.
But to be able to, But I guess to be able to do this without first supporting the client with grounding skills and a secure base to be able to process the trauma can actually unintentionally cause harm. And if you know, Judith Herman, she's written a lot of books around trauma. Like she talks about remembering is not recovering. So it's not about, tell me about the abuse that that happened to you when you were 3 or something like that. It's like that's not part of the process. So it's just because they've kind of come in for trauma counselling, it doesn't actually mean that you're going to actually talk about the trauma. And I've worked with hundreds of people that have never talked about their trauma, and particularly children, it's like, well, they may not have the verbal
capacity,
skills to be able to do that. So we don't have to know the story to be able to support them with their trauma.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that actually, because I found even through my own experience with therapy, particularly with psychologists, so highly trained people, I was so shocked at how many times I had to repeat myself. Like if I was even being passed to another psychologist within the same clinic, and I was often being asked to retell my story again and again and again, and I would always leave that session absolutely triggered. Like I would just be high anxiety, I would just be so dysregulated, and I'll be like, and then I would feel like I've done this huge workout. I'd be so burnt out afterwards that I would often even crash at home, and it wasn't making me want to continue seeing these people, because I was like, this is not helping me. Like this is harming me. I don't actually it's got no healing aspect in this whatsoever, until I found my latest psychologist, who's been incredible. I loved her approach straight away. It was like literally first session, she had my file. She was like, don't worry, I've already read through your file. I know the gig. You don't need to repeat yourself. Can we go over a couple of your triggers? I'd been in the game for a while, so I was very aware of my triggers at that point. So she was like, let's go through your triggers. What is it that you're wanting out of these sessions? What are you needing? How can I help you achieve this? And she was just like, boom, 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 boom. And I was like, yes, this is exactly what I needed. I didn't want to, I was worried I was coming into this new psychologist and she was going to be like, all right, now tell me why you're here. And I'll be like, just read the damn file. Like, I don't want to. But she did.
You know what? Sometimes it's actually good for you to, for people who are in that situation to actually say, read the file. You read the file, because I don't. I've already shared it, and I don't need to share it again.
Yes, exactly.
Children who go through child protection unit stuff, and it's like, well, tell me blah blah blah, and verbatim what's happened. And the other thing is, it's like, well, you're not always going to be able to remember everything. And it's actually causing destabilization, and the whole point of trauma-informed work is to actually create stabilization. So yeah, you know, some of the effects of misguided support can actually include relived flashback symptoms, dissociation, and and as I said, that destabilization. So yeah, you don't have to say read the damn file, but you can say I've already shared, but you can if you want. Yeah, it's like
I was ready to.
that probably wouldn't get you off to a very good start, but it's like, well, I've already shared my story, and I'd like to work. You know, this is what I'd like to work on right now. So here, right now, in this present moment, how it's impacted my life and what I can do to kind of improve that.
Yes, absolutely. And was there anything else, because I rudely interrupted you then, anything else you wanted to add in regards to the dangers that can occur if trauma isn't addressed?
No, I think
we've covered it?
Yeah, I think that's it really. Yeah, it's about, bottom line is, first, one of the first stages is stabilization. Don't ask me about any of my trauma until you've provided a stable environment for me to actually share that, if I choose to.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you choose to. Exactly. So tell me a little bit about Clare MacLeod consultancy. Like, what services do you currently have on offer, and what is the best way to contact you for further information for those who might require some further trauma-informed education?
Yeah. So you can contact me via email or through my website or by phone. Some of the services that I currently provide include tailored trauma-informed workshops. So I do workshops on vicarious trauma and self-care, trauma-informed practice, how to work with clients who've experienced childhood sexual abuse, also working with older adults who've been sexually abused as children. There's some work that I do which is around protective behaviours and consent, so early childhood protective behaviours work, so that would be with parents and daycare centres and early childhood educators. What else? Consultancy work with children and young people and their families who've engaged in harmful sexual behaviours, and also reflective practice. So there's some of the workshops that I can tailor. I also provide supervision and mentoring to other helping professionals and educators. And as I said, that consultancy work with families and also helping professionals and educators trying to navigate the difficulties with children who engage in harmful sexual behaviours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So what are the costs that are involved with these services?
So individual 1 hour sessions are $195 for, as I said, for an hour. I'm not registered with Medicare anymore because I'm not doing the clinical work as such. So I don't have that registration. Tailored workshops I can negotiate depending on what's required, but I'm happy to chat with folks about that. And supervision is the same as 1 hour sessions, which is $195. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to add that maybe we haven't discussed today? Sorry.
There is actually. So I'd just like to add that my work operates from a strong reflective practice base. So to be able to provide trauma-informed services, it's absolutely essential that we work reflectively. So and I've kind of learned to do it on the go now. So it's like I can kind of pick. It's like, oh, I noticed that in my body just then. Okay, I'll save that for later. And so I'm kind of present with the client. If we're kind of working reflectively, then we can look at, how did that work for the client? Did it work for the client? If it didn't, what can we do differently? How can we correct that? how can we actually sit in a space of vulnerability if we don't know something? So we owe it to the clients of, as I said before, that trust, that sense of trust. It's like, to be able to do that, you can say, you know what, I haven't got a clue, but I will go away and I'll find out. And if it's something that I need to train in, then I will train in it to kind of support that person. So my commitment to reflective practice, it's throughout all levels of my practice, in clinical, management, supervisory and training capacities. My learnings have definitely supported me in my work. To the point where, you know what, oh, wow, I thought I'd done all that. And then it's like, oh, I better make an appointment with my own therapist to kind of work on that. So, what else? I suppose, looking at that, it's like I continue to receive my own personal therapy as and when I need it. And we actually owe it foremost to ourselves so that we can actually hold that space for our clients.
Definitely.
So it's clear, it's a clear space. It's not kind of clogged up with all your own shit. And finally, what I want folks who are seeking support to know is ask if the clinician is trauma informed and if their practice is trauma informed. Clients are the customers, and just because a referral may have been sent to a particular clinician by the GP, that doesn't mean that they have to go there. They've got the right, the absolute right, to seek out the best services for themselves. So that's probably the biggest one. It's like, as we were saying before, you talked, about your experience, Paris. It's like, well, all those times that you've actually had to say that stuff, and it's like, well, if they were trauma informed, you wouldn't be doing that. So we owe it to our clients to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And it's providing the best service that we can and making sure that we're doing right by the client as well. And I'm so glad you brought that up as well, that, the clients do have a choice, because a lot of people I speak to, just in general about mental health, addiction, things like that, have often engaged with the service and maybe it hasn't been the right fit for them. And they've taken that as a sign to not continue at all because it's the wrong path for them. But I think you've got to really look into the organization, who you're dealing with individually as well. And, double check that it is right for you. And if not, it doesn't mean that path of healing isn't appropriate. It just might not be the right organization or individual for you. Like maybe they aren't trauma informed. So it will hinder your experience regardless. So just knowing that you've got that choice to change it. You don't have to stick it out if it's not feeling right for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claire. It's been so wonderful to have you on the show today. So for our listeners out there, for our listeners out there, we'll also post up your website, links to your email, contact numbers, and if anyone has any questions, they'll be able to contact you directly. So I will have that information available for everybody.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Bye.